Shame, it's one of the worst and most painful experiences that one can have, in my opinion, because shame makes you want to just hide and disconnect and isolate, and you don't want people to see you. You feel like you don't deserve to be here. You feel like you don't deserve love because if anyone knows or sees the real you, these parts that you feel so much shame about, no one's gonna love you, everyone's going to leave. And it's such a lonely feeling, lonely and painful. I've had a lot of experiences with shame because I am someone who has a very high level of self-awareness and integrity and moral compass. However, I've learned that motivation, desires, conditioning, and needs are all very powerful drives, especially when you don't have enough clarity and awareness and trust and nervous system regulation to act in alignment with your values. What happens is, even though deep down you know how you want to show up, you know your values, in the moment, those other things take over. And you end up doing things that are out of alignment for you, that you regret, that you feel shame, deep, deep shame over. And so I want to talk about this today because this is one of the most crucial part of the journey in reclaiming my self-worth and building myself back up from that deep hole of shame and low self-worth. With shame, how you go about dismantling it is, first, you have to allow yourself to face the reality of what happened. Whatever you did, face the facts and the circumstances and everything you did. Just lay it all out, and you can journal about this or have someone who's a space holder listen to you while you share. But it's very important to kind of get it out of your system and be out in the open. And shame is actually a reactive emotion. So you're reacting with shame and guilt because you're actually a very integrous person, because you know your actions or what you've done is completely out of alignment with who you actually are. And it's that gap that creates the shame. So ironically, you feeling so much shame and so much guilt is proof that you are a good person, even though the shame tries to convince you that, you know, you're horrible and you don't deserve to be here, blah, blah, blah. But I think that point is very important to recognize, is your immense shame and guilt is proof that you are a good person. And the next layer is, the antidote to shame is compassion and understanding for yourself and accepting yourself. Now, this is different from condoning your behaviors and saying what you did was okay, because maybe you did hurt people and others were harmed from your actions or words. And we have to take responsibility for that. However, what we're letting go of is this punishment on yourself and this meaning making of identity that you've attached to your actions. You know, meanings like, I'm a bad person, I don't deserve love. All this stuff is unnecessary, because what you have to understand is you were doing your best in that moment, given the level of awareness and consciousness, all of your conditionings and wounds and your needs in that moment. That was what you thought was the best course of action. And maybe you regret it 1 minute later, but that's still 1 minute later. In that moment, when you made that decision, you had no other choice, because if you could make a different choice, you would. No one's sitting here and being like, oh, let me make a mistake right now. Let me do something wrong right now. No one's consciously doing that. We're always doing what we think is the best choice in that moment. Again, we might regret it like 5 minutes later, but even in that 5 minutes, your perspectives or your thought process has shifted. And so once you realize that, you really can't blame yourself for these past actions, because the you right now that's feeling the shame and the regret is not the same version of you that committed those actions. And to go further, if the you back then thought doing this was the best choice, it meant that that action or whatever you did served some kind of purpose for you. It fulfilled a need, it fulfilled a desire, it brought you some sense of reward. And so it might not be the highest way. Again, it might not be the most loving or aligned way, but it was the only way that you knew how back then. And so I want you to really be in that version of you's shoes and really try to understand, okay, what caused me to do this? What was I gaining out of it? Because once you understand the motive, and it's usually quite innocent, you know, maybe you're trying to feel safe, maybe you were trying to make yourself feel a little bit better. It's a very innocent desire. Even though it might have caused harm to other people, I'm not denying that. I'm just trying to get you to see that the intention itself, there's purity in that. So once you recognize that, I think it becomes a lot easier to hold yourself in compassion and understanding, and really just telling yourself, hey, I understand why you did that, and I'm not going to punish you anymore for it. And honestly, there is nothing to punish, because you were just doing your best. And it was a mistake. Now we've learned from it. Now we're different. Now we're making different choices. This chapter can be closed. And in fact, you wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for the past version of you that made all these mistakes that you're now reflecting on and gaining all the lessons from.